Hello.
Hello. So thank you so much for your time to taking this interview. I really enjoyed your book, and my siblings did too. So can you start by introducing yourself, telling us bit about your background and what inspired you to become a writer?
Sure. Um, my name is Michael Panzner. I've actually written three books at this point, three children's books. I actually was a writer. I wrote about 20 years ago. I wrote books for big people, adults, more serious stuff. But I just decided that I've always liked writing. I've done writing for a number of years as a freelance writer, but I thought it would be really fun to write books for kids. And one reason is that I have five grandchildren, and I thought it'd be really fun and exciting to make books where I could sort of talk about the things they might be interested in, and actually all of the characters, all of my grandchildren are have a character name in one or the other book. So that's a little secret. Um, and the Taekwonderoos, which is what we're talking about today, and I hope to be the first of many books. Rescue at Rattling Ridge really got inspired by a the fact that that's the book. My grandson George, who happens to be one of the characters in the
Yeah,
books,
and there's
was
a
interested in Taekwondo. And I thought that would be a really cool idea for a book. So that was kind of the start of it. And it got me thinking. So
uh-huh. Are Jackson and Brianna some of your grandkids too?
they are not. They are actually just, there was a friend of my grandson's that had the name Jackson, and I thought that was a really cool name. Brianna, remember, I think I read a book once with that name, and I thought it was a really cool name. But only in that book, the only one of my grandchildren's named George. My other books, I've used the other children's names, the other grandkids' names. So I wanted to spread it around a little bit. Didn't want to make it all kind of in one book. I wanted to make everyone have a little bit of a different story. So
Yeah. Did your grandchildren enjoy the books?
they did, yeah. I mean, the youngest now is about I guess about a year or so. The oldest is 7. George is the oldest. And they have enjoyed it. They particularly like the sort of stories being exciting and fun. I mean, I like try to be a little bit funny too, and the characters, I try to make them the kind of things that people like to look at. So
Yeah. So have you ever tried Taekwondo?
not myself. I did actually do try karate once when I was young, but no, I've just gone and watched my grandson do it, and I've become very interested in it. In fact, before I started writing the book, I had some little knowledge of it, but I used to see on YouTube and Instagram and places like that, actually see people doing it, so I could get some inspiration for the book itself and some of the moves that they did, and some of the ways that they approach the challenges that they had, and I think I learned very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Um, so what inspired you to have um like what did like the characters' personalities? What inspired you for the characters' personalities?
Well, one of them, I mean, I think like in the real world, I wanted them all to be a little bit different. I wanted them all to have unique skills. I know some people, for example, that are very good at keeping everyone calm and keeping everyone sort of relaxed, and a voice of reason. And I thought that would be great for Jackson. There was George was a very much a kind of a thinker sort of person, looking at strategy and figuring out things,
As
and
in like the
and
leader.
looking. Yeah, yeah. Plus, I had to use my grandson, so I had to make him the leader. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to make the other character, Brianna. I wanted her to be really exciting and interesting. And that's one of the things I saw in George's the class that he goes to, is it was probably more girls than boys, actually, which I didn't know to begin with, but I think nowadays there's a lot of girls who like Taekwondo starting at a very young age. And I thought, it would be great to have a character who is like some of the individuals I saw in the Taekwondo class.
Yeah,
So,
that's lovely. That's lovely. Yeah.
so
Um, so how'd you come up with the title?
well, that was interesting. I was trying to think. Okay, so I had this idea that Taekwondo. I wanted to write a story that Taekwondo and George, right? I didn't really know what it was going to be to begin with, so I was thinking, there's sort of words, and you can put little endings on the end of words to make it sound like a group, like Taekwondoistas, Taekwonderoos, and then it just hit me one day, Taekwonderoos. It's kind of like a sort of name or a group, and I was thinking Taekwonderoos. That sounds like kangaroos, and then it hit me. Taekwondo is a very leg-oriented sport. There's a lot of kicking.
Yeah.
Karate is more arms, but Taekwondo is more legs and jumping. And I thought, fantastic.
Yeah,
Kangaroos
kangaroos are
are
great
good.
at kicking and jumping.
That was it. I mean, I didn't start out thinking it would be kangaroos. I just started, I'd like to do a story with a character that is interested in Taekwondo. And then I just, like I said, I like, groups. I like people that get together and they're friends and they all have special
Yeah.
talents. And I said, and I
Sort of
just
like
was
the
playing
Super League
around.
or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it just popped into my head one day, and I thought this sounds really really cool. So that's kind of how I went with that story.
Well, that's great. So are there any interesting or memorable experiences that happened in your life that influenced you in the book other than your grandson George?
Well, I think I've always liked adventure stories. I've always liked the idea. I've been in the business world, and I know that a lot of things can get done when people work together as a team, and you take the best advantage of each person's individual strengths. And I thought those are the kinds of things that are important for people to know about, and to read about and to learn from, especially when you're young. So I think that combination of things that I thought really were helpful, like teamwork and knowing that, when you work together as a team, somebody's going to be good at one thing and somebody's going to be good at another and somebody's going to be another. If you put it
Yeah.
all together, it makes it into something that's really special.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us about your process of writing the book?
Well, I think the first thing you want to do, obviously, is, and what I did as well, is to decide how you want the characters to be, right? What you have this idea in your head that, okay, so I had George. I started one character, and I said, okay, so I want this character to be more of a kind of a strategy type person. But then I thought about other people, that I've sort of seen in movies, read about in books, seen on TV, in real life. What could be other strengths? What could be other useful things? And then I sort of fleshed out those ideas about the characters that,
Yeah.
one person. And then, if you've seen martial arts type movies and you've seen more, there's often somebody who's a very sort of has a good way of calming, sort of like what
The
you
Zen
see with
master
some.
almost.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I thought of the fact that, I think there has to always be in every group, like real life, there's a lot of people who are very much more adventurous, and
Yeah.
they like challenges and they like taking on. So this other person had to be there, and it kind of like gelled together like that. So I started with the characters. I said, this is what I like the characters to be. And then I thought about the idea, well, obviously they're kangaroos, so you have to be in Australia. And I did a lot of research on, the scenery and what the ground, what it looks like there, and
Yeah.
and about these kangaroos, because I actually picked a certain kind of kangaroo. There's more, most people, and I didn't know, again, I learned a lot of this as I went along, but there are more than one type of kangaroo. And I thought, okay, the kind I picked was the one that's very sort of familiar to people outside of Australia. They're
Mhm.
called Eastern Grey kangaroos. They're well known for their legs. They're
Yeah, it
kicking
even
and
mentions in
jumping.
here that they were Eastern gray kangaroos.
That's right. And they were, they fit. So what I did is a lot of research and looked at, what's the kind of things that they do and how do they act. And, I learned interesting things about when they sort of sense something's going on or sense danger or whatever, they put their heads up in the air and then they twist around with their noses in the air, trying to kind of figure out where it's coming from, and their ears rotate. So I tried to bring all of those features in to the story. So I thought, let me think about what could be interesting, and the idea of rescuing a little one, rescuing the Joey, which is a baby kangaroo. That hit me in the head. I thought, well, rescuing little ones is always a good idea for a story. So it just sort of came together like that, and it was just a question of, the practice I've seen in the beginning of the book. They talk about their practicing and learning their skills, and suddenly something happens, and that's where the adventure begins. And that's kind of how I got to the story.
My brother and sister thought it was really funny in the beginning because when it said that they were practicing, and when on the page when it said they were practicing, because if you see, I'm pretty sure that's George, the one with the brown tuft of hair. And what he had was like, they thought that he was like, it looked like he was doing squats, and they thought it was funny. And the other one, they said that she was dancing up and down.
Yeah, no, they all had a little, and in fact, I have to say that when I wrote the book, obviously, when you have a picture book, it's not just words, it's pictures, right?
Yeah.
Illustrations. And I had this idea in my head what I thought they should look like, because when I wrote it, there was no image. I mean, I knew what a real kangaroo looked like, and I knew what taekwondo uniforms looked like, and I knew what kind of like generally how I was going to go. But I actually had to find somebody who could, make pictures and draw, create illustrations that brought my characters and brought my story to life. And I found someone, and this person did a fantastic job, and it's great. And I wanted something that, one day, hopefully, maybe this will be the kind of thing you see in a TV show or something like that.
Yeah, I know, that's what I was thinking, because it sort of does look like a TV show. The taekwondo.
In the back of my head, I wasn't obviously, you want to write the book so the book is good and that it's exciting and interesting to look at. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking this would make a really cool kind of TV type show.
Yeah. Like before you know it, it'll be everywhere on lunch boxes, stickers.
Okay. Sounds good to me. So yeah, she did a wonderful job. Her name is Laura Look, and she's actually from another country. I found her and started working with her, and she did an awesome job. And it took probably from the time I first started thinking about the idea to the time the book got finished, it probably took sort of 4 months, 5 months to do that.
5 months, that's fast, even for a picture book. Because some people I've met, like some authors that I've interviewed, just a picture book takes one of them told me 3 years.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Because it was a picture book, but again, everyone has their own speed.
Yeah, and it depends on the art. She was very, very talented and very creative, and she worked quickly. But yes, I've heard the same thing. I do know that obviously it depends on the kind of illustrations that you have. Some of them are very intricate, and they have all a lot of different colors and shapes and lines, and so I can understand it takes time. And also when people, I self-publish the books. Some people work with a sort of larger publishing house or more traditional publishing house. There's much more of a kind of roadmap for things to go a little slower, I think, than when you're working. So I was able to work pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, that's good. And so what message or theme do you hope later readers learn from the book, other than what you already mentioned, which is you said working together as a team accomplishes everything, right?
Right.
Yeah, that one.
And also courage, creative thinking, because obviously they had to solve some problems, right? They had to cross this
ladder and all that.
Exactly. And I think sometimes you have to, in real life, you don't necessarily have the things you need to get something done. So you have to make the most of what you can find, right? And I think that was I guess you could call that resourceful. And then also I thought the fact that people could come to an agreement. It's not just teamwork, but you can actually decide together on what you want to do, and
Yeah,
take collective action. So,
mm-hmm. That's true. So if you could give one piece of advice to kids who want to become authors or authors just in general, what would it be?
well, if one of the things that I found interesting, and Taekwonderoos is my second book. I actually wrote another book to begin with, which was about unicorns, because I had a granddaughter who loved unicorns, and that was kind of the inspiration for that book. But that was interesting to me because I always thought it'd be hard to write a story, write something just out of your head, like magic, creative magic. And I always thought, you had to get a flash of inspiration. It had to be something that you thought of, like, one day when you're sitting down at the computer. But then I realized that you can get inspiration from real life things, and you
Yeah,
can turn those real life things into a story. And I think that's what for me was like a sort of an eye opener. And I thought it was awesome that I could use sort of ideas, people I know, uh, subjects I sort of have learned about, stories that are kind of familiar in some ways, and actually put something together that was new and creative and cool. And that was really how I got to that point. And I think for people who want to write, it's just look around and actually see what's there. And if something seems
yeah,
interesting to you, then say, you know what, I can make a story out of that. It doesn't have to be something that just inspiration that flashes into your head.
yeah. One time I got inspiration from a lawnmower.
Did you? What
Yeah,
what was your inspiration?
it's about a lawnmower named Freddie who doesn't want to cut the grass because he thinks that the grass is going to get him dirty. And he wants to be inside and he wants to become a vacuum cleaner or a washing machine. I haven't worked out the kinks.
That's great. Actually, but that's, you know what? That's exactly how the process should work. Is it doesn't have to be this sort of super duper,
Good
I
idea.
just thought of this thing from it could just be something like that, which turns into a much bigger story. And I think that's great. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, thank you. So if you could travel back in time and give yourself one piece of advice at any point in life, what would it be?
Well, I think I've never really had a problem trying things that I hadn't done before. But I think in terms of writing, for example, I've always written. Like I said, I wrote books for adults many, many years ago. They were nonfiction books, so they were based on the real world and real world events. They weren't sort of made up like fiction is. But I think I got into a comfort zone. I thought it was that's what I could do. So that's what I focused on rather than trying to look at it from a little bit of a different angle. And I guess as I got a bit older, and you can see I'm a bit older, I decided to be fun to do something different, something more fun. And so I think if I had to go back and change anything, I may have tried this sooner than I did. Let's put it that way.
Uh, so what do you enjoy doing for fun other than reading? Because if you're gonna love to write, you're gonna have to love to read.
Yeah, right. Reading, writing. I like learning about new things. I like playing around with computers. I'm a kind of a geek, and I like sort of taking things apart and putting things together. I like watching all kinds of entertainment. I think entertainment's fun and exciting, and especially now, there's so many different things you can find. But I think, and just hanging out, going outside. And I mean, for a long time, I lived in New York and the New York area, and it was cold. And I moved down to Florida, and it's great when you can never have to worry about snow. So I think it's great. You can enjoy the outdoors, and I've enjoyed the move. So.
Yeah, well, I've sort of done the opposite because I'm living in Florida now, but we're going to go on a trip to New York in this month
Mhm.
actually, this month in March. Yeah. And so
Oh, wow.
are you planning to write any more books?
I am. I am. I mean, apart from I think the next goal is to try and write sequels or follow-ups to the ones that I've already done. I did a lot of them all in one time span before, just because I felt like they had to get them out of my system and get them done. But it would probably be more staggered, like one after another after another. Um, but once you do it to begin with, and once you kind of get feedback and people give you ideas, it's great. I mean, some of the people who sort of reviewed and read my books had some ideas, maybe you could do this in the future one. And I thought, that's great. I'm going to write that down because that might come in handy. Um, or when it comes to sort of Taekwondo, right? I look and I follow some of the people who are good at it. They're gearing up for the Olympics, and Taekwondo is a sport in the Olympics, which
Yeah.
you may be aware. And I was looking at some of their moves, and I'm saying, yeah, you could do a lot of stuff with some of those moves that they do that I've seen on the videos. Um, but I think that's my idea, is to kind of continue the stories here, and hopefully, make them as good as the first time around.
Yeah, that's lovely. So we've run out of time and questions. Thank you so much for your time taking this interview. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, and it was fun.